You fear the unknown, and that fear is the silent architect shaping the walls of your life. It convinces you to stay where everything feels predictable, where risks are minimal, and where nothing challenges the version of yourself you already know. The unknown becomes a place you tiptoe around, a space you avoid exploring because you imagine danger, failure, or embarrassment waiting for you there. But what you don't realize is that every time you turn away from the unknown, you shrink your world a little more. You narrow your possibilities. You limit your future to the boundaries of your past. Life never becomes bigger by repeating what is familiar. The familiar may feel safe, but it rarely helps you grow. You already know who you are inside the comfort zone. You know your routines, your habits, your excuses, your limits. But greatness isn't born from what you already know. It comes from what you're willing to learn. Every dream you have, every potential you carry, every breakthrough waiting for you exists outside of what is familiar. And the only way to reach it is by stepping into the unknown with courage, even when your heart is racing and your mind is full of doubt. The unknown is not the enemy you imagine it to be. It is simply the unexplored territory of your future. Everything you admire in others, the confidence, the skill, the resilience, was once unknown to them too. They didn't become strong by standing still. They became strong by stepping forward. They walked into situations where they didn't have all the answers. They allowed themselves to be beginners. They allowed uncertainty to shape them instead of scare them. And in doing so, they expanded the size of their lives. Fear wants you to believe that stepping into the unknown will break you. But staying in the same place forever is what truly breaks your spirit. It makes you feel restless, dissatisfied, and trapped. A life without challenge becomes a life without meaning. You begin to wonder if you're capable of more, and deep down, you already know the answer. You are capable of far more than you've allowed yourself to experience. But you cannot access that potential when you stay hidden behind the borders of safety. The unknown is where your strength grows. It is where your confidence is built. It is where your character is revealed. When you take a step into something new, whether it's a new skill, a new opportunity, a new conversation, or a new direction, your world expands. You discover pieces of yourself you never knew existed. You realize you can handle setbacks, navigate uncertainty, and adapt in ways you never imagined. The unknown becomes less frightening each time you face it, because with every new experience, you become more powerful. You fear the unknown because you underestimate yourself. You see the risk, but not your resilience. You see the potential failure, but not the strength you gain from trying. You see the difficulty, but not the person you become by enduring it. The unknown doesn't shrink you, fear does. And fear shrinks you because it knows that the moment you step forward, its power dissolves. Do not let fear design the map of your life. Do not let comfort be the ceiling of your potential. Do not let the familiar convince you that nothing greater is possible. The world is much bigger than the one you've allowed yourself to experience. Your future is far richer than the routine you repeat each day. But you will never touch that future if you keep waiting to feel ready. You will never grow if you keep choosing safety over possibility. Step toward the unknown even when your voice shakes. Trust yourself even when you don't have all the answers. Move forward even when the path feels unclear. Because on the other side of the unknown is not danger. It is expansion. It is the life that matches your spirit, your ambition, and your potential. And the moment you choose to walk into that space, everything about your life begins to grow. Clarity begins where comfort ends, because comfort wraps the mind in a soft fog that makes everything feel familiar, predictable, and safe, yet also keeps the deeper truth of who you are hidden beneath layers of habit and routine. When you remain within that familiar space, you operate on autopilot. You repeat the same reactions, defend the same limitations, and cling to the same explanations about why things are the way they are. Nothing challenges your assumptions, so nothing disrupts the illusion that you already understand yourself and your life well enough. But clarity never grows in a place where nothing is questioned. It emerges the moment you step into territory where your usual patterns no longer work, and where you must see yourself with new honesty. Discomfort forces awareness. When you move beyond the boundaries of what you already know, The mind cannot rely on old scripts. It must become alert, observant, and engaged. It must pay attention. Think about the last time you traveled somewhere unfamiliar or tried something you had never attempted before. Even if you were uncertain or uneasy, you were fully present. Every sound, every detail, every decision mattered. In that heightened state, you are more conscious of your environment and, even more importantly, of yourself. The unknown sharpens your senses and quiets the background noise of daily life. This sharpened awareness is the birthplace of clarity. Comfort, on the other hand, numbs you with repetition. It convinces you that what you see is all there is, and that you don't need to question your direction, your habits, or your choices. You settle into routines that make you feel stable, but stability often becomes stagnation. Without discomfort, you rarely ask whether your goals still align with your values, whether your actions reflect your true self, or whether the life you are living is the one you actually want. Comfort tricks you into mistaking familiarity for purpose. It allows you to drift rather than drive. Eventually, you forget that there is more to you than the role you play each day. But when you willingly walk into discomfort, you interrupt this drift. You reveal the gap between who you are and who you think you are. For example, the moment you attempt a difficult conversation, start a new discipline, or pursue a dream that scares you, your weaknesses, strengths, fears, and motivations all rise to the surface. You see your impatience, your excuses, your resilience, your creativity. Discomfort exposes everything you tried to hide from yourself. And in seeing it clearly, you gain the power to change it. Clarity also grows from the humility that discomfort teaches. When you challenge yourself with something unfamiliar, you confront the reality that you don't know everything. You cannot rely on past achievements to carry you. You become a learner again. This humility opens the door to curiosity. Instead of defending old beliefs, you begin questioning them. Instead of clinging to certainty, you become willing to explore. Growth requires this openness. A rigid mind cannot become clear, just as a stagnant pool cannot become transparent. Fresh movement is needed, and discomfort provides that movement. Stepping outside your comfort zone also reveals the stories you tell yourself. Everyone carries internal narratives. I'm not good enough. I can't handle failure. I'm too old. I need more time. These stories thrive in comfort because comfort gives them no reason to be challenged. But once you stretch yourself, these stories meet reality. You discover whether they hold truth or whether they crumble under pressure. Most of the time, they crumble. You realize that your fears were exaggerated, your doubts were inherited rather than chosen, and your limitations were more mental than actual. In this realization, clarity deepens. You begin to see yourself not as the small, cautious version shaped by fear, but as someone capable of far more than you believed. Even difficult emotions become clearer when you venture into discomfort. When you always stay safe, you avoid confrontation with your inner world. You bury frustration, ignore dissatisfaction, and silence the whispers of your deeper desires. But discomfort brings these emotions to the surface. It forces you to recognize what you have been avoiding: the job that drains you, the relationships that limit you, the habits that keep you stuck, the dreams you've postponed. In facing these truths, clarity becomes unavoidable. You can no longer pretend not to know. Ultimately, the unknown strips away the noise. It removes the distractions that shield you from self-understanding. It places you in direct contact with reality as it is, not as you wish it to be. And in that raw encounter, you see not just the world more clearly, but yourself more clearly. What you avoid controls you. What you face dissolves its power over you. Because avoidance is a silent agreement you make with your fears, granting them authority over your decisions, your emotions, and the boundaries of your life. Every time you step away from something that intimidates you, you strengthen its influence. You confirm to yourself that the fear is valid, that you are not capable enough, strong enough, or ready enough to confront it. Over time, these avoided moments accumulate and begin to shape the terrain of your life. You walk around certain conversations, navigate away from specific opportunities, retreat from growth, and eventually begin to shrink your world to match what feels manageable. The problem is not the fear itself. The problem is the space you give it to grow unchecked. Avoidance acts like a shadow, that lengthens the more you run from it. You tell yourself you are simply postponing discomfort, but in truth you are feeding it. The fear becomes heavier, more complex, and far more intimidating than it ever would have been if you had faced it early. The mind magnifies whatever it does not confront. A difficult discussion becomes a catastrophe in your imagination. A new challenge becomes a potential disaster. A personal truth becomes unbearable simply because you refuse to acknowledge it. Avoidance does not protect you. It imprisons you in illusions that grow more convincing with every day you refuse to meet them head-on. By contrast, the moment you turn toward what you fear, its power begins to weaken. Not because the challenge disappears, but because you stop allowing your imagination to distort it. Facing something reveals its real size, its real weight, and its real consequences. These are almost always smaller and more manageable than the exaggerated versions you created by avoiding them. You begin to see clearly that what terrified you was not the thing itself, but your thoughts about it. When you confront the situation directly, your mind can no longer inflate it into something monstrous. The light of awareness shrinks the fear down to something human, understandable, and solvable. Facing what you fear also reconnects you with your own strength. The moment you take action, even if your hands shake or your voice trembles, you remind yourself that you are not powerless. You prove that courage is not the absence of fear, but the decision to act despite it. Once you experience that, the grip of avoidance loosens. You no longer feel trapped by what you once believed you couldn't handle. You develop a deeper understanding of yourself, your resilience, your capacity for discomfort, your potential to adapt. That inner shift changes everything. A challenge you once avoided becomes a reference point of empowerment. You begin to think, I handled this, so I can handle more. Avoidance thrives in uncertainty, but courage grows through exposure. When you repeatedly face what scares you, you train your nervous system to tolerate discomfort, instead of reacting to it as a threat. What once felt unbearable becomes manageable through familiarity. You learn to stay present rather than flee. You learn to breathe rather than collapse into panic. You learn to respond rather than react. And as this emotional capacity expands, the power of your fears continues to dissolve. They lose their ability to dictate your choices because you have shown yourself, repeatedly, that you can withstand what they bring. There is also a deep psychological freedom that arises when you stop running. Avoidance binds you to a constant undercurrent of tension. Even in moments of rest, the unaddressed fear lingers in the background, waiting for attention. Facing it grants release. It ends the cycle of suppression and anxiety. It clears the static from your mind. You no longer waste mental energy protecting yourself from imagined outcomes. Instead, you cultivate clarity, a grounded understanding of what is real and what is merely a projection of old wounds, insecurities, or assumptions. Facing what you avoid also brings hidden truths into the open. Sometimes the fear is not about an external situation, but an internal revelation. You may avoid expressing your needs because you fear being judged. You may avoid pursuing your dream because failing at it feels emotionally dangerous. You may avoid setting boundaries because part of you worries about conflict. But when you confront these fears, you uncover the beliefs that have quietly shaped your behavior for years. In bringing them to the surface, you regain the power to change them. You can rewrite the narrative because you finally see the script. Ultimately, the act of facing what you fear is an act of reclaiming authority over your life. It is a declaration that you refuse to be governed by anxiety, hesitation, or imagination. With every confrontation, you dismantle a little more of the internal prison that avoidance built. The more you turn toward what scares you, the more expansive your world becomes. Inner strength grows when you choose discipline over distraction, because discipline is the deliberate act of directing your energy toward what matters, while distraction scatters that energy across countless impulses that promise comfort but deliver nothing of substance. Distractions are easy, seductive, and everywhere. They offer immediate relief from effort, discomfort, or boredom, but because they require almost nothing from you, they also give almost nothing back. They keep your mind occupied but not enriched, busy but not productive, entertained but not fulfilled. Discipline, on the other hand, demands intention. It requires that you act based on values rather than moods, that you commit to a path even when it feels inconvenient, and that you take responsibility for shaping the person you are becoming rather than surrendering to impulses. Inner strength is not a trait you are born with, but a capacity built through consistent practice. Every small disciplined choice is like lifting a mental weight. Each time you resist a distraction and stay aligned with your priorities, you reinforce the belief that you are in control of your actions and your life. That belief becomes the foundation of inner strength. Without discipline, you remain at the mercy of habits, cravings, emotional fluctuations, and external noise. Distractions dictate your behavior, and you drift through days without direction. You may feel busy, but you rarely feel strong. Discipline teaches you to tolerate discomfort, and this tolerance is essential for growth. Anything meaningful requires effort. Learning a skill, building a career, strengthening a relationship, improving your health, or deepening your emotional awareness. But effort is often uncomfortable, and the mind naturally seeks to avoid discomfort. Distractions offer an escape, a temporary refuge from the challenge. Yet every time you escape, you reinforce the habit of avoidance, and avoidance weakens your capacity to endure. When you choose discipline instead, you stay with the discomfort long enough to grow through it. You discover that you can handle more than you thought, and this realization expands your inner resilience. Another reason inner strength grows through discipline is that discipline builds trust in yourself. When you follow through on your commitments, even small ones, you send yourself a powerful message: you are reliable. You do what you say you will do. This internal trust is one of the most stabilizing forces in life. Without it, you second-guess your decisions, struggle with self-doubt, and feel unanchored. With it, you develop a quiet confidence that cannot be easily shaken. Distractions erode that trust because they pull you away from your intentions. They create a pattern of starting and stopping, hoping and abandoning, wanting and postponing. Over time, you begin to doubt your ability to maintain momentum. Discipline breaks this cycle. Choosing discipline also strengthens focus, which is another pillar of inner strength. Focus is not simply the ability to concentrate on a task. It is the ability to direct your attention toward what aligns with your purpose. Distractions fragment attention, leaving your mind restless and overstimulated. You bounce from one task to another, rarely completing anything, and rarely engaging deeply enough to produce meaningful work. Discipline trains you to sustain attention, even when your mind tries to wander. This deep engagement with your actions creates clarity, efficiency, and a sense of mastery. When you learn to control your focus, you learn to control your life. Furthermore, discipline helps you understand the difference between what feels good now and what leads to fulfillment later. Distractions thrive on instant gratification. They offer quick pleasure, but rarely leave you better than before. Discipline prioritizes long-term fulfillment, guiding you toward actions that build a meaningful life. Each disciplined choice becomes a brick in the architecture of your future. When you choose discipline repeatedly, you accumulate evidence of your capability, purpose, and direction. This accumulation becomes inner strength in its purest form. Discipline also strips away illusions. When you stop numbing yourself with distractions, you become more aware of the thoughts, emotions, and fears that you have been avoiding. This awareness can be uncomfortable, but it is also liberating. You begin to understand your habits, motivations, and limitations with honesty. This clarity allows you to break patterns that no longer serve you and replace them with ones that do. Facing yourself is one of the hardest forms of discipline, but it is also the most transformative. Through this process, you build emotional strength, self-compassion, and integrity. Ultimately, each disciplined act is a choice to live intentionally rather than reactively. Distractions pull you outward, scattering your energy across the demands of the world. Discipline draws you inward, strengthening the core from which your decisions, actions, and identity arise. The more consistently you choose discipline, the more grounded, stable, and powerful you become. Inner strength is not built in sudden leaps but through quiet, persistent moments of choosing what aligns with who you want to be rather than what temporarily numbs who you are. Awareness is the first step toward freedom, because you cannot change what you do not recognize, and you cannot break free from patterns, beliefs, or habits that remain hidden beneath layers of automatic behavior. Most people move through life responding to circumstances without fully understanding why they react the way they do. Their choices are driven by conditioning, past experiences, unresolved emotions, societal expectations, or fears that operate quietly in the background. Without awareness, these invisible influences dictate the shape of your life. You might think you are making conscious decisions, but often you are simply repeating familiar routines. Awareness brings light into these unconscious spaces, allowing you to finally see the mechanisms that have been steering you without your permission. Freedom begins the moment you start noticing. Noticing your reactions, your thoughts, your impulses, your excuses, and the stories you tell yourself. Awareness does not require immediate change, it only requires honesty. When you observe your behavior without judgment, you begin to uncover the deeper motivations beneath it. Perhaps you snap at others when you feel insecure. Perhaps you procrastinate because you fear not being good enough. Perhaps you cling to relationships that drain you because you fear being alone. These truths remain hidden when you move unconsciously. Awareness reveals them, and with revelation comes the possibility of transformation. Awareness also interrupts the autopilot state. When you become aware, you pause. In that pause, you gain the power to choose instead of react. That split second of observation is where freedom begins. It allows you to shift from being controlled by your emotions to being guided by your intention. You start to see that you are not your thoughts, you are the observer of them. You are not your fears, you are the one who recognizes them. This separation between the self and the mind creates space. In that space, freedom grows. Awareness deepens your understanding of your emotional world. Many people suppress or ignore their emotions, believing that avoidance will protect them. But suppressed emotions do not disappear. They simply influence behavior from the shadows. Anger becomes passive aggression. Fear becomes hesitation. Sadness becomes withdrawal. When you cultivate awareness, you start to witness these emotions as they arise. You see their texture, their triggers, their patterns. Instead of letting them control you, you learn from them. Emotional awareness does not eliminate discomfort, but it gives you the strength to sit with it without being overwhelmed. This emotional honesty is a critical step toward liberation, because you are no longer run by feelings you refuse to face. Awareness extends beyond your internal world. It also illuminates the external influences shaping your choices. You begin to notice how certain environments drain you, how some relationships shrink you, how particular habits consume your energy. You see clearly how you give away your power through people, pleasing, avoidance, comparison, or perfectionism. Awareness makes these exchanges visible. Once visible, you can question whether they serve you or limit you. You become more intentional about the spaces you occupy, the people you trust, and the energy you invest. This intentionality is a form of freedom. Through awareness, you also uncover the beliefs that define your identity. Many of these beliefs were inherited unconsciously from family, culture, or past experiences. I'm not worthy. I can't change. I always fail. I'm too much. I'm not enough. These beliefs shape your behavior and limit your potential, often without you realizing it. But when awareness brings them into view, you can begin to challenge them. You ask whether they are true, where they came from, and whether they deserve to remain part of your identity. This internal questioning loosens their hold on you. Awareness does not instantly erase limiting beliefs, but it begins the process of rewriting them. And in that rewriting lies your freedom. Awareness also cultivates presence, and presence is the antidote to distraction and fragmentation. When you are present, you are no longer dragged into the past or pulled into the future. You are grounded in the reality of now. In this state, the mind becomes clearer, decisions become wiser, and actions become more aligned with your values. Presence is a form of freedom because it liberates you from the stories and fears that live outside the present moment. Awareness is the gateway to this presence. Finally, awareness empowers you to take responsibility. Responsibility is not about blame, it is about ownership. When you become aware of your patterns and choices, you realize that you have the power to shape your life. You stop waiting for external circumstances to change and begin changing your internal world. Awareness gives you the clarity to act, the courage to face discomfort, and the freedom to choose a path that reflects your authentic self. Life expands in proportion to your courage to explore unfamiliar territory, because every new experience, challenge, and path you choose to step into stretches the limits of who you are and what you believe is possible for you. When you remain within the borders of your familiar world, everything stays predictable. You know how things work, what to expect, and how to navigate the routines that shape your days. There is comfort in predictability, but comfort often becomes a quiet container that keeps you from discovering the parts of yourself that only emerge when you step into something unknown. The unfamiliar asks more of you, and in rising to that demand, you grow. Courage is not the absence of fear, it is the willingness to move despite fear. The fear of the unfamiliar is natural. It comes from the mind's desire to protect you from uncertainty, risk, or failure. But the same instinct that tries to keep you safe can also keep you small. When you allow fear to decide your boundaries, your life becomes confined to what you already know. Your dreams remain theoretical, your potential remains dormant, and your world becomes a loop of repeated experiences. To expand your life, you must be willing to move into places where you do not yet have competence, confidence, or clarity. This movement is what activates growth. Every meaningful transformation begins with a willingness to explore what lies beyond your current understanding. Think of any skill you have now. At some point, it was unfamiliar. Think of any relationship that matters to you. At one time, it was new and uncertain. Think of any accomplishment you are proud of. It began with a step into territory where you didn't yet know what the outcome would be. Your life only grew because you chose to engage with something you had not yet mastered. Courage opens the door to the next chapter of your life by inviting you into situations where you must learn, adapt, and evolve. Exploring unfamiliar territory forces the mind out of habitual patterns. When you encounter something new, your senses sharpen, your awareness increases, and your thinking becomes more flexible. You begin asking questions, searching for possibilities, and engaging with life more actively. This mental expansion leads to a deeper understanding of yourself and the world. You start to see opportunities that were invisible when you were focused on staying safe. The unfamiliar broadens your imagination and teaches you that life is far larger than the narrow boundaries you once believed defined it. Courage also expands your emotional capacity. Stepping into the unknown often triggers discomfort, uncertainty, vulnerability, self-doubt. But each time you face these feelings rather than retreat from them, you strengthen your ability to hold them. You learn that discomfort is temporary, that anxiety is manageable, and that courage grows through repetition. Over time, what once felt overwhelming becomes familiar. Your emotional resilience deepens, and you realize you can navigate far more than you once imagined. This resilience becomes a foundation that supports you through new challenges and empowers you to explore even further. Unfamiliar territory also reveals aspects of yourself you may never have discovered otherwise. Strengths that were dormant, creativity that needed space to emerge, confidence that only appears when tested, and perspectives that only arise when you see the world through new experiences. When you explore, you meet new versions of yourself, ones that are capable, resourceful, and expansive. These versions cannot be found through comfort alone. They are forged through curiosity, risk, and courage. Life expands when you explore because exploration brings new connections, new skills, new opportunities, and new meaning. The unfamiliar introduces you to people you would not have met, ideas you would not have considered, and paths you would not have known existed. Each new connection enriches your perspective. Each new skill widens your possibilities. Each new opportunity shifts the trajectory of your life. Expansion is not a single event. It is the accumulation of all the unfamiliar moments you dared to step into. Courage also dismantles self-imposed limitations. Often the territory we fear exploring is not external but internal. It may be a truth we avoid acknowledging, a dream we hesitate to pursue, or a part of ourselves we are afraid to express. When you courageously explore these inner landscapes, you release old beliefs, heal emotional wounds, and uncover desires that have been buried beneath fear or expectation. As your inner world expands, your outer world naturally follows. Ultimately, life meets you at the level of your courage. The more willing you are to explore what you do not yet know, the more possibilities you unlock. The borders of your life are not fixed. They shift outward every time you choose curiosity over fear, expansion over safety, and exploration over repetition. Growth is a daily practice because it is not something that happens in sudden bursts or dramatic moments, but in the quiet, consistent choices you make moment after moment. Many people imagine growth as a breakthrough, a revelation, or a significant achievement that transforms everything at once. But real growth rarely unfolds like that. It is built slowly, almost invisibly, through repeated actions, honest reflection, and the willingness to improve in small, steady increments. Each day becomes an opportunity, sometimes subtle, sometimes challenging, to refine your character, strengthen your mindset, and move closer to the person you want to become. Daily growth begins with awareness. You cannot grow if you do not pay attention to your thoughts, habits, and reactions. Each day presents moments that test your patience, your discipline, your compassion, and your intentions. Some days, the challenges are small, choosing to stay focused instead of distracting yourself, choosing a kind response instead of a reactive one, choosing to complete a task instead of postponing it. Other days, the growth opportunities are heavier, facing uncomfortable truths, admitting when you are wrong, letting go of something familiar, or choosing integrity when it is easier not to. These moments are rarely impressive from the outside, but they shape you from within. They accumulate, like drops of water that eventually carve stone. Growth is a practice because it requires repetition. You cannot simply decide to be disciplined, patient, or brave once and expect it to define you. These qualities grow stronger only when exercised regularly. If you practice patience today but abandon it tomorrow, the growth is inconsistent. If you set goals but only act on them when feeling motivated, the progress remains shallow. What turns growth into a daily practice is the commitment to continue even when it feels slow, uncomfortable, or invisible. The progress made on days when you feel uninspired often matters the most because it strengthens your ability to act from commitment rather than emotion. Another reason growth is a daily practice is that life continuously changes. New circumstances emerge, new challenges arise, and new versions of yourself reveal themselves. What helped you grow last year may not be what you need now. Growth requires ongoing adaptation. You cannot rely solely on past lessons. You must remain open to learning. Each day teaches you something new if you are willing to listen. Sometimes the lesson comes through success, and sometimes through mistakes. Sometimes through periods of peace, and sometimes through difficulty. Growth asks that you remain a lifelong student. Daily growth also involves making intentional choices about how you spend your time and energy. Habits shape your life far more than occasional inspiration. If you want to grow mentally, you must nourish your mind each day. If you want to grow emotionally, you must engage with your feelings rather than run from them. If you want to grow physically, you must take care of your body regularly. If you want to grow spiritually or creatively, you must create space for those practices consistently. Small habits, repeated daily, create massive change over time. They turn intentions into reality and dreams into lived experience. Growth requires honesty. It asks you to look at yourself clearly, your strengths, your weaknesses, your patterns, and your excuses. Daily practice means regularly checking in with yourself. Where did I fall short today? What triggered me? What did I avoid? What did I handle well? This self-reflection is not self-criticism, it is self-awareness. Without honesty, growth becomes accidental. With honesty, growth becomes deliberate. Each day gives you the chance to adjust your course, correct your mistakes, and realign your actions with your values. It is also important to understand that growth is not always about doing more. Sometimes the daily practice of growth is about resting, letting go, forgiving, or allowing yourself to heal. Growth can mean saying no, taking a break, or stepping back when you have been pushing too hard. It can mean protecting your boundaries, ending a harmful habit, or releasing a mindset that no longer serves you. Growth is not a constant upward climb. It is a cycle of effort, renewal, and understanding. What matters is that you continue moving with intention. Over time, the daily practice of growth transforms you quietly. You begin to notice subtle changes: how you respond to stress, how you communicate, how you handle setbacks, how you trust yourself. Others may not see the internal shifts immediately, but you feel them. You realize you are more grounded, more capable, more aligned. And because you have practiced growth daily, you trust the process, even when it feels slow. Growth is not an event but a way of living. It is built in the simple, consistent moments when you choose awareness over avoidance, intention over habit, effort over ease, and alignment over comfort.